for this, and no one else.
But in the end, it was anxiety over new arrivals that still provoked the most political turmoil.
It is this fact which, added to all the rest, points to the prospect of eventual conflict upon a scale which cannot adequately be described by any lesser term than civil war.
By the mid-70s, the battleground had switched to family members who wanted to join black and Asian people already settled in Britain. Some 50,000 were still arriving each year.
There were still a lot of men who'd come to Britain to work, recruited, and whose families were still stuck in India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. And what had happened as sort of racist atmosphere had grown up in the country and allegations of, people coming in wrongly, more and more hurdles and checks had been put into the system, and it became an entrapping system that really put families through hell to prove that they really were the children and the wife of the man.
There were enough people trying to get in when they shouldn't get in to cause the inquiries to be more and more tough, more and more prolonged, more and more suspicious, and the innocent suffer from that, even when the wicked ones somehow have a cleverness to get through.
Many of the people waiting here will have travelled hundreds of miles, not for an interview, but merely to get a date for a first interview. The earliest dates now available are 21 months away, August 24th, 1976, nearly 2 years before this woman can even begin to prove her claim.
But getting an interview was only the first hurdle. Panorama filmed an office in Pakistan where half the applicants failed to convince officials of their case.
I cannot really be satisfied in my own mind, I stress the word satisfied, that you are related as claimed to Muhammad Afsar in the United Kingdom. You've been unable to offer any explanation at all for the occurrence of these discrepancies. And I'm obliged, therefore, to refuse your applications to join Muhammad Afsar in the United Kingdom. This is my decision. You may appeal against my decision.
She can appeal to an adjudicator in England, but that may take years.
The minister in charge of immigration under Roy Jenkins was uneasy about the way the system operated.
Alex Lyon is the Home Office Minister in charge of all immigration policy. Mr. Lyon, are you satisfied yourself with the procedures that we've seen in this film?
No, I'm not. I've never been satisfied with it since I took over in March.
Is it at all necessary for most of these apparently bona fide cases to go through all this?
We have to distinguish between that which is necessary to put off the evader and that which simply deters the bona fide applicant. These people have a legal right to come, and there are a limited number of them. I have no hesitation in saying that the sooner that they can come, the better for everybody concerned.
Alex Lyon, who died in 1993, used his ministerial powers to help applicants he thought genuine to beat the system. He was assisted at the Home Office by his future wife.
We had to work very long hours to get all these cases processed. We used to have piles and piles of files, massive caseload. And he used to go through them one by one and use his discretion to overrule the advice of the department to get families reunified.
What he liked to do was to have a little bit of freedom of manoeuvre on his own, to be helpful. Helpful is not the right word, to give people what they wanted at his discretion.
I used to get my assistant private secretary to put them into piles of no and yes, because the yes ones he could sign without looking at them. So he had enough time to crawl through the other ones to sort of overturn.
He liked to be able to say yes, because he'd like to be nice to people, which not always possible. They can't always have what they want. In life, I must say, if I can be a bit sort of philosophical.
It made a lot of difference to a lot of families. I still meet people around Britain on railway stations and things who say, I remember your former husband, he was the one who let our family be together again.
Alex Lyon was sacked after only 2 years in the job.
He was quite clumsy about the way that he went about pursuing his aims inside the Home Office. He greatly offended many officials, though not his private secretary, Claire Short. I'm afraid that he and Roy Jenkins didn't get on very well.
Alex interpreted it as a lack of support for his firm convictions on race and immigration, and he felt that deeply, and he said so.
Couldn't it be that Mr. Callaghan, with his generally acknowledged keen sense of public opinion, recognises that ultra-liberal attitudes on race relations cause a good deal of popular resentment?
I like the delicate way you put it, and I think that that is a very important factor in his mind, and an out-of-date factor.
Lyon's departure removed from government one of the few opponents of tough immigration controls.
By the time I was Home Secretary, the question of illegal immigrants, people coming in vehicles to the ports and coming in, was a major issue. You'd think that every night half of Pakistan or Asia was padding up the beaches of Dover, the way everybody believed it was going on. It did go on to some degree.
Far from fostering good race relations in Britain, the drive to keep out illegal immigrants often made matters worse.
Why are my children apart from me? Just because of these racist laws.
My recollection of Anwar Dita's campaign was that she came to symbolise a much wider problem.
Rochdale, Lancashire. Anwar Dita lives here with her husband and 4-year-old daughter.
I was born in Birmingham, brought up in Rochdale. I was sent to Pakistan in 1962. I was married in 1968. I had 3 children there. And my husband came to England in 1973. I followed him in 75. And after the birth of my 4th child, that's where all my hell of the life began.
When Anwar tried to bring her first 3 children from Pakistan to join her, the authorities refused them entry. The Home Office became suspicious about a discrepancy in Anwar's story. Anwar had married her husband twice, once under Islamic law in Pakistan, then 7 years later under British law. The first time she'd only been 15 and they'd lied about her age, so Anwar's date of birth was different on the 2 marriage certificates.
They said there's 2 Anwar Ditas. One Shujauddin married in Pakistan, the second one that he married in Rochdale. My answer to that was, I'm the same person.
Anwar's children had to remain in Pakistan for 6 years while she campaigned against the Home Office's refusal to admit them to Britain.
I had to go to give fingerprints and thumbprints.
I gave them photographs, I gave them loads of details what they needed of the children.
Lie detector I offered myself. Blood test I offered myself. I even offered the Home Office that I'll pay for the investigation for somebody to go from the Home Office. All these things weren't accepted.
They are cruel and they're bloody liars, the Home Office. That's what I think of the Home Office.
The more they, said no, the more determined I was to prove that, I'm not a liar. It's the government that is lying.
I'm going to fight till the last breath in my body. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep fighting on because they are my children. Nobody in the world can prove that they're not mine.
Bring no more children home! Bring no more children home!
So the last resort was going for internal medical examination to prove that I gave birth to more than 1 child. And that was the really, really, hard thing for me. That was really bad. It was like, how can I describe it? It was like being abused by consent. That's how I felt. By law, you can do this to me, to prove that these are my children. And I can never forget that, never.
In 1981, the Home Office finally surrendered to the weight of evidence.
The children arrived in Manchester 6 years to the day after they last saw their mother in Pakistan. Their father had flown over specially to collect them. At last, the reunion. Mrs. Dita wept, the children were dazed, and they hardly remembered the mother who'd fought the Home Office for 6 years to bring them to England.
Even when I think about it, what I've been through, you feel so depressed and you say, what the hell? Why did I go through all this? All those questions wouldn't have arisen if I would have been white.
The pressure to check the numbers entering Britain at Heathrow filtered down to immigration officers.
I was once told if I wasn't too sure about how to interpret the rules, or I felt unhappy about it, perhaps I should interpret them as this particular chief immigration officer had done, which was to say, well, did I want the particular person standing in front of me, living next to me in 10 years' time?
One test became notorious.
They started examining women to see whether they were virgins or not, on the grounds that no Indian man sending a woman would accept someone who wasn't a virgin as his potential wife. So therefore, if the woman had lost her virginity, she was phony. She was trying to get in on other grounds. And this actually went on at Heathrow Airport Terminal 3.
The virginity test was one of the things one couldn't quite believe was really happening.
After the scandal of virginity tests became public, the Labour Home Secretary put a halt to it.
Actually, I think it was so gross that it was one of those milestones that started things being improved.
The most extreme features of immigration control, which had so poisoned race relations, seemed to be disappearing. But there was soon a new twist to the politics of immigration.